Hey guys, my name is Damian Graham, and today I'm going to be going over my persuasive speech. Did you know that for every 100 residents in the US, there are 120 guns? Crazy, right? This is why I want to argue for stricter gun control. The amount of gun-related crimes is steadily increasing over each year. More and more people are being taken away from gun violence. With stricter gun control, we can lessen this to significantly lower numbers. I am for stricter gun control. With stricter gun control, we can make our country a safer place for us now and for the years to come. I'm not saying we have to be like Japan with having a no guns allowed policy enacted across the entire country, even though I think that would be nice, but at least with this, we will be making a step into the right direction. My opponent believes that gun control does not help law-abiding citizens, but does encourage criminals to get more guns. He goes on to show that historically speaking that stricter gun laws do not keep guns out of the hands of criminals, but make it harder for normal citizens of America. The example he used for this was the assault weapons ban between 1994 and 2004. He said even though this ban was put in place, that it didn't stop the shooters at Columbine in 1999. This is my opponent's first argument. As for his second argument, he goes on to say how gun-related crimes have decreased over the years, stating that we are safer now than we were during the Reagan administration. That the gun control advocates often cite the 11,000 gun murders in the country as justification for stricter gun laws, but no one states how cancer kills 50 times more than guns, and my opponent wondered why no one has proposed legislation to control cancer, that cancer is more likely to kill a loved one than gun violence. My opponent's last point is in favor of a form of gun control with having national background checks, but if we want to really get our hands on gun control, we need to implement more measures to ensure gun violence is less prevalent. Now, even though my opponent makes a fair case as to why gun control may not work, there's more here to dissect. There are three cases my opponent made, and I will elaborate as to why this is just not the case or way of thinking, and that why gun control is still the right option instead of just letting it be. His first case is that gun control does not help law-abiding citizens, but encourages criminals to get more guns. I would first like to say, how does gun control not help you as citizens? What is it stopping you from doing? You can still purchase your gun if you pass your background check. So how does this hurt us? If anything, it is stopping you that is doing what it was intended for. As far as that encourages more criminals to get more guns, I believe that there is at least one sound thing we can do here. One, re-implement the ban on assault rifles as well as add harsher and stricter agreements in it as well. What the ban did was stop the weapons that was manufactured after the ban's reinstatement. What about ones before this? Where are the guidelines to these? In my research, I found that even though the ban was a good step in the right direction, that there were many loopholes and discrepancies that wasn't made for especially weapons before the enactment. If the ban was taken more seriously and did a better job or writing laws that went for those before the ban as well as afterwards, I feel that it would have had a more positive impact. My opponent's next case is about how gun-related crimes decreased while also using the example of it being way more peaceful now than it did during the Reagan era. What my opponent fails to mention, though, is that the instances that he thought just so happened on its own was due to a ban that he says led to more gun violence. When this ban was implemented, it not only stopped new guns from being manufactured, it also gave local law enforcement money for increased manpower and upgraded computer systems. This is what my opponent forgot to mention about this ban, as well as to why this sudden decrease happened. With more officers, we are able to respond as well as prevent the violence from ever happening. Along with increased manpower, we also have increased and upgraded use of computers in police departments. With this, they can strategically lay out where they need to send more police officers to, therefore decreasing the likelihood of gun violence going off. The last case my opponent made is that if we were to have a form of gun control and implementation of national background checks, then the implementation of national background checks would help. My opponent does mean well and is only speaking for his just rights, but this would not be enough. We should all know that a simple national background check would not be the cure-all for such a matter. No stricter policies will have to be implemented to make this country a safer place. Like in the first point with the ban, it simply wasn't made and done properly. What we need to do, what we need is for the federal government to take this matter seriously and not to just put a band-aid over a broken issue. For this to be done correctly, we need lawyers, lawmakers, and politicians to all come together to make a very sound law that can be the end of all gun violence, whether it be a full-on ban across the entire nation, to making gun control super strict with multiple steps in obtaining a gun that would only make the ones who truly want a gun for whatever legal purposes they want it for obtainable. Now, even with all the points I made, I know it won't go without opposition to my reasoning and logic, so let me address them now. For the matters of my first response, I know my opponent may bring up is that reinstating the ban is what caused an uptick in violence for the next couple of years, as well as that you don't know how having gun control impacts us citizens on the day-to-day. Well, all I have to say about this is that the problem that lies with the ban that was done before was that it was ill executed. It didn't state what happens to guns before the ban, and no checking for loopholes was also done as well. If the ban took a stricter guidance and implementation of it would have had a more significant impact. As far as the second point made about not knowing the day-to-day effects of current gun owners, I would just say that I do know. It makes the procedure of getting a gun for a good citizen longer. That is it. If the only thing that makes it bad for gun owners is waiting, then I do not see the harm of that. It means that you can still get your guns. As for the opposition I will receive for my second case, will be as to how can I be so sure as to those specific reasonings was what led to the decrease in gun violence. Well, let me explain my case. Not only did I have the data that was collected from a credible source that tracked these instances, but there are also other studies that show just how even the presence of a police officer is more likely to lower the case of crime, therefore, as well as gun violence. The last opposition my opponent would make is the fact of how I can be so sure that they would be stricter with the gun control and know that they would need to do more than just a background check. Well, everything is never in black and white. But if they were to try and go for this again, I hope that they would look back at how things went the first time. The government knows that if they are going to do something, it has to be done right, especially due to what happened with the ban the first time with the increase in gun violence. This time around, the government knows what needs to be done for this time to be successful and to look out for. Well, I hope this encourages you as well as why we need gun control and gets you riled up with wanting to do something about it. We discussed my opponent's arguments on gun control, with them being about them affecting more of the citizens than the criminals, about the amount of gun violence actually decreasing as time moved along, and last, about even with gun control and a national background check, that it still won't be enough. We discussed my cases for each of my opponent's reasonings as well as my opposition that my opponent may have for my reasonings to his cases. Even though me and my opponent have our different views, it is very important that yours is heard as well. If ever you need your voice to be heard, you can always contact Prevention Institute at 510-444-7738 or email them at preventioninstitute.org. Remember that every voice matters and this can always be heard. Thank you.